My sister betrayed me and married my millionaire fiancé. 7 years later, she bragged she had it all. I smiled back. Have you met my husband yet? Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from right now. Are you team quiet success or team loud luxury? I want to know who's with me. The dust hadn't even settled from the tires of the old pickups lined up along the gravel road when the rhythmic thumping started. It drowned out the quiet murmurs of my father's funeral service. Then the wind picked up, kicking dust into everyone's faces as a sleek, black helicopter descended onto the pasture just 50 yards away. It was obscene. This wasn't a gala. It was a burial in the middle of the Texas Hill Country. But Rose never understood context. She only understood attention. The door opened and she stepped out, draped in black designer silk that cost more than my parents' entire house. Behind her was Carlos, my ex-fiancé, the tech genius who was supposed to be family. He adjusted his suit, checking his watch as if morning was just another meeting he was late for. They walked toward the gravesite with the kind of entitlement that sucks the air out of a room. Rose stopped right in front of me, grabbing my hand so the light caught the massive 12-carat diamond on her finger. "Oh, Scarlett," she said, her voice dripping with performance. "You look tired. But I guess that's expected. This simple life must be exhausting." She leaned in closer. "Carlos and I just closed on the new estate in San Francisco. It's breathtaking. You really should come see what real success looks like." I didn't pull my hand away. I just looked at her with cold, clinical observation. I glanced over my shoulder at Arthur, standing by the fence line in his faded trucker hat, quietly fixing a loose post. He caught my eye and gave a small nod. I turned back to Rose and smiled. Not politely, knowingly. Because she didn't know that the ground she was standing on, the helicopter she arrived in, and the mansion she was bragging about, it all belonged to the man fixing the fence. She thought she was the main character. She didn't realize she was just a tenant in my reality. An eviction day was coming. I watched Rose work the room after the service. She moved from relative to relative, flashing that ring, scrolling through photos on her phone. "This is the view from the master suite," I heard her say to our Aunt Linda. "And the infinity pool." Carlos insisted on Italian marble. Linda nodded, looking small and tired. Rose didn't notice. She just swiped to the next photo. "It's bigger than this entire ranch house. Can you believe it?" I stood by the refreshment table just watching. Few years ago this would have crushed me. I would have felt small. But today I saw it differently. It wasn't confidence. It was panic. Rose was like a vampire who had lost her mirror. For her entire life, I had been her reflection. She defined herself by being better than me. When I left 5 years ago, she lost her baseline. Now she was starving. She was devouring the attention of grieving relatives because she was empty inside. It's a specific pathology. Narcissistic injury. Without someone to envy her, does she even exist? She looked over at me, catching me watching. She immediately straightened her posture, touching her hair, her ring. She walked over, her heels sinking into the soft earth. "So," she said, her voice brittle. "Mom says you're still doing the urban planning thing? In Austin." "I am," I said calmly. "I enjoy it." "Cute," she said. "Carlos is disrupting the entire housing market. We're building the future. You could probably work for him. Maybe in administration. It would be a step up from whatever this is." She was trying to feed. She needed me to snap, to cry, to look jealous. She needed that hit of superiority to fill the void. "I'm good, Rose," I said. "I like my life." Her smile faltered. "Right, course. Simple pleasures. I guess not everyone is built for greatness." She turned away, dismissing me. She was right about one thing. Not everyone is built for greatness. But she had confused greatness with volume. She thought being loud meant being important. She didn't realize that the most powerful thing in the room isn't the one screaming for attention. It's the one who doesn't need it. It wasn't the first time I'd seen Rose perform like this. Watching her work, the funeral crowd triggered a memory so sharp it felt like a physical cut. I was back in San Francisco at the groundbreaking ceremony for The Nexus, the tech headquarters that was supposed to define the skyline and my career. I had spent 2 years on those blueprints. It was my intellectual property, my vision. Carlos stood on the podium, holding the ceremonial golden shovel. "They say architecture is the art of the soul," he boomed over the speakers. "And this design, it came from a muse." He extended a hand. Not to me. To Rose. She walked onto the stage, wearing a hard hat that looked ridiculous on her perfectly blown-out hair. She took his hand, looking surprised in that rehearsed way she had perfected. "This building," Carlos continued, "is the physical manifestation of Rose's genius. Her sketches, her dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, my fiancé and the architect of our future, Rose." The applause was enthusiastic. Rose beamed, accepting the credit for 2 years of my sleepless nights. I stood in the VIP section, holding a glass of champagne that tasted like vinegar. The rage didn't come as heat. Came as ice. It was a data point. I wasn't a partner. I was a resource. And my lease had just expired. I placed the glass on a passing tray, turned my back on the stage and walked away. I packed my hard drive, shredded my physical files, and left my keycard on the desk. I didn't fight for the man or the credit. You don't argue with a thief. You just make sure they can't steal anything else. 2 weeks later I was in Austin. I bought a small plot of land in the hill country. Just scrub brush and silence. That's where I met Arthur. I was at the hardware store, struggling to load plywood into a rented van. A beat-up 2005 Ford F-150 pulled up next to me. The driver got out, wearing work boots and a trucker hat. He didn't say a word. He just helped me slide the wood in. "Thanks," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Heavy load for a Tuesday," he said in a gravelly voice. "Building a house." "By myself," I replied. "It's the only way to make sure it's done right." He looked at me with respect. "I've got some fence posts that need setting down the road. If you need a hand with the framing, I work for beer and honest conversation." I didn't know then that he was a venture capitalist who owned half the county. All I knew was that he helped me load the truck and didn't ask for credit. Carlos was glass and vapor. Arthur was dirt and steel. He was real value. And standing there, I realized I was done with glass houses. I was ready to build something that couldn't be shattered. Back at the funeral, the air was thick. Rose was complaining about the gravel scuffing her heels. My mother, Susan, hurried over, murmuring apologies. Then she pulled me aside. "Scarlett," she said urgently. "Please. Not today." "Not what, Mom?" "Don't start. I saw the way you looked at her. I know you're happy in Austin. But Rose, she's going through a lot. The renovations, the pressure. She's fragile." I stared at her. My father was in the ground. "She arrived in a helicopter, Mom. She's wearing a diamond the size of a grape. I don't think she's fragile. She feels things deeply," Susan insisted. "She needs to feel special. Please just dim your light a little. Let her have this moment." I looked at my mother with pity. They didn't protect Rose because they loved her more. They protected her because they were afraid of her. By never letting her fail, they hadn't raised a strong woman. They had raised a cripple. "You didn't help her, Mom," I said quietly. "You handicapped her. You taught her that reality is optional. And now she's out there trying to build a life on sand. And you're still trying to hold back the tide." Susan flinched. "That's cruel." "It's the truth." I walked away. But Rose wasn't done. She cornered me near the buffet, pulling out her phone. "You have to see this," she said, shoving the screen in my face. "This is the final rendering for the house. Carlos says we're breaking ground next month. It's going to be in Architectural Digest." I looked at the screen. The world stopped. It wasn't just a house. It was the glass citadel. A specific avant-garde design I had drawn in my private sketchbook 6 years ago. I had never shown it to anyone except Carlos. once. It's unique, isn't it? Rose smirked. Carlos says I have a natural eye for design. She stole it. She stole my intellectual property, my private dream. It's beautiful, Rose, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Where is it being built? Skyline Boulevard. Best view in the city. He nodded. Skyline Boulevard. Got it. I walked away, my hands shaking with cold, hard rage. I found Arthur by the fence line. What happened? He asked. She stole the Citadel design. They're building it on Skyline Boulevard. Arthur frowned. Skyline Boulevard. He pulled out his phone, his eyes sharpening. He tapped the screen, zooming in on the construction sign in Rose's photo. He got a strange look on his face. He dialed a number. Hey Mike. It's Art. The development on Skyline. Who's the tenant on the land lease? Carlos Rivera. And the status? He listened, his expression hardening. Okay. Send me the ledger. And Mike. Draft the notice. He hung up and looked at me. They aren't building that house, Scar. They don't own the land. They're leasing the lot with an option to build. And they haven't paid the lease in 4 months. He showed me the phone. A ledger for Aurora Holdings, Arthur's subsidiary. The tenant was Carlos Rivera. The balance was a wall of red. He's broke, Arthur said. His tech company imploded 6 months ago. He's been floating checks to fake solvency. He's not building a dream home. He's squatting on my dirt. He's your tenant. Technically, he's my liability. Arthur tapped the screen. An email popped up. Notice to quit. An eviction notice. It's your call, babe. Do we execute the eviction now, or let them play pretend? I looked across the pasture at Rose laughing loudly. Do it, I said. But not by email. Let's deliver it in person. The reception was held in the old hay barn. Carlos stood near the open bar, holding a glass of whiskey, loudly recounting the valuation of his tech unicorn to my cousins. Arthur was leaning against a support beam, nursing a bottle of Shiner Bock. Carlos spotted him and sauntered over. I moved closer, staying just out of sight. So, Carlos said with that distinct note of condescension. Scarlett tells me you're in. What is it? Hauling. Arthur took a slow sip. Something like that. I move things around. Carlos chuckled. Honest work. Must be nice. Simple life. No shareholders breathing down your neck. Arthur smiled. It was the smile of a man watching a child play with a loaded gun. It has its perks. Low stress. Unless people don't pay what they owe. Tell me about it, Carlos sighed. The overhead on my new development is killer. We're closing on the Skyline property next week. 8 figures. Skyline, Arthur repeated. Expensive dirt. The best. But we're transforming it. That's funny, Arthur said, setting his beer down. Because my asset manager tells me that property is stagnant. And the tenant, a Rivera Tech Solutions, is 4 months behind on the land lease. Carlos froze. Excuse me. Arthur straightened up, his presence filling the space. I'm not just a hauler, Carlos. I'm the majority shareholder of Aurora Holdings. We own the Skyline lot. And technically, I own the debt you've been defaulting on since February. The color drained from Carlos's face. There must be a mistake. You don't have a finance team, Arthur interrupted, his voice lethal. You have a laptop and a negative balance. You aren't buying that land. You're squatting on it. The silence was heavy enough to crush bones. My parents looked confused. Who are you? Carlos whispered. I'm your landlord, Arthur said. And rent is due. Rose rushed over in a cloud of panic. What's going on? Tell him who we are, Carlos. He knows who you are, I said, stepping out. Stay out of this, Scarlett, Rose snapped. No, I said, standing next to Arthur. This is personal. You wanted to talk about the house, Rose. Let's talk about the house. I held up my phone with the rendering. The glass citadel. Brilliant design. It's my vision, Rose snapped. Carlos lied, I said. I swiped to a scanned image of my sketchbook, dated 6 years ago. I drew this in 2018. I showed it to Carlos once. You didn't design it, Rose. You traced it. You stole my intellectual property. And you slapped your name on the permit application. My mother gasped. Scarlett, stop. I'm not finished, I said. And that ring. The 12-carat symbol of success. Carlos looked sick. Scarlett, don't. Arthur knows the jeweler in downtown San Francisco where you tried to buy the real version 3 months ago. Your card was declined. 3 times. So you went across the street and bought a moissanite replica for $400. I looked at Rose. It's glass, Rose. Just like the house. Just like the billionaire. Just like your life. Rose looked down at her hand, shaking. She looked at Carlos, waiting for him to deny it. But Carlos just looked at the floor. The illusion shattered. My parents stood there, horrified, realizing they had bet their pride on a fraud. The golden child was plated. And the plating had worn off. Get out, Arthur ordered softly. Carlos didn't argue. He grabbed Rose's arm and pulled her toward the exit. She stumbled, her face a mask of humiliation. They looked like con artists running from the law. My mother walked toward me, hands fluttering. Scarlett. We didn't know. He told us. I know what he told you, I said. And you believed him because you wanted the fairy tale so badly you didn't check the foundation. We can fix this, my father said weakly. We're family. No, I said. You chose the shine. Now you have to live with the rust. I turned to Arthur. Let's go home. What about the eviction? Arthur asked. Do I send it? I looked at the dust where Rose had fled. No. Don't evict them. Arthur looked surprised. Why? Because if we kick them out they can play the victim. Let them stay. Let them wake up every morning in a house they can't afford, on land they don't own, knowing that we are the ones allowing them a roof over their heads. Let them live with the fear. That is a far worse punishment. Arthur smiled. You're terrifying. I love it. We walked to his beat-up Ford. As we drove away, leaving the wreckage of my family's ego behind, I felt profound peace. We weren't going back to a mansion. We were driving to the 500 acres Arthur had closed on last week, a sanctuary for wild mustangs. My revenge wasn't destruction. It was creation. It was the justice of the sower. While Rose and Carlos consumed and pretended, Arthur and I were building. We were planting seeds in soil we actually owned. We were creating a legacy that couldn't be repossessed or stolen. You can steal a blueprint, but you can't steal the mind that drew it. You can steal a fiancé, but you can't steal the capacity to be loved. I looked out at the endless Texas sky. Real value doesn't scream. It doesn't need a helicopter. It whispers. And that whisper is the loudest thing in the room. If this story reminded you that your peace is more valuable than their approval, hit that share button. And tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you built that no one can take away from you?